Welcome back to GN Sports. Since the Bears season ended in Green Bay, it's been full head of steam for Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren as they search for the organization's next head football coach. So who's the front runner? Who could be the dark horse in this process? Well, if anyone has that answer, it's Diana Rossini, senior NFL insider at The Athletic. And we sat down and we broke bread today, kicking things off with her thoughts on when the Bears might interview Mike McCarthy in tonight's Gimme 5, brought to you by Xfinity.
Yeah, I think after the Dallas Cowboys declined Mike McCarthy that opportunity to meet with the Chicago Bears, I think that obviously all changes once he legally can do that on his own, which is now. So I think this is going to be something that the Bears are going to jump on, knowing that this was something that they were interested in. And the Bears have done a really good job of casting a really wide net, and they are learning so much about each of these candidates, but also learning a lot about themselves. I was told that they've been getting some really good questions from some of these coaches about their operation and how they want to do things. So I would expect Mike McCarthy to be in the mix very soon.
Ryan Poles had his first in-person interview with Ron Rivera. Given the history of the Bears, his experience as a head coach, do you think that he could actually be a good fit for this organization?
I do think Ron brings a lot of really great qualities. I remember just even back in his days with Carolina, even before he took that Commander's job, and I was covering Carolina a lot, and I was around that locker room, and he's one of those head coaches that has the pulse of the locker room at all times. He is not the loudest. He is not an in-your-face type of leader, but he has the ability to immediately get the respect from his players. That is a strength, right? Kevin Warren saying he wants a leader of men. Ron Rivera fits that. If that is what they are focused on, that makes all the sense in the world why they would bring someone like Ron Rivera in. Now, in terms of him having a real shot at it, I don't think so. I think Ron Rivera has a lot of really good qualities, and obviously the fact that he has been a veteran and he has done this for years is without a doubt a strength that he brings, especially in these interviews. Because I have heard some of these newer coaches who've never been through this process, they're not acing these interviews, which I think is pretty apparent considering how many candidates that we're seeing, not just in Chicago, but outside Chicago. You're seeing the New York Jets doing the same thing, just really casting a wide net. But I think when it comes down to it, I think Ron Rivera was able to make a really good case, but I don't believe that he is a top candidate for the Chicago Bears.
Well, Mike Vrabel, though, he was available for an in-person interview, Diana, and the Bears didn't bring him in. Do you think that not interviewing him in person hurt their chances? And is that seen as a misstep around the league?
I do. I think you got to use every advantage you possibly can, especially if you're not playing in the playoffs and you're interviewing a coach that doesn't have a job. And Mike Vrabel had the ability to get on a plane if that's what they wanted, and go to Chicago and sit and feel what it feels like in Hallis Hall and sit in front of Kevin Warren and sit with Ryan Poles and get to know them. Because they don't know each other. There's no connection there. They've never been together. And I think that's what the New York Jets did really well. It was important to them to bring Mike Vrabel to Florham Park in the Jets facility so he could see it and feel it and be around what the Jets organization is like. So for a team like the Chicago Bears that should be showing off what they are and the history and what it means to be a Bear, I do think that was a miss. But I also understand that in their mind, there's a process. And the process that they wanted was this first round to all be virtual no matter what. But I do think that definitely was a disadvantage, despite the fact that I think a lot of people in the league believe that Mike Vrabel's heart was always in New England.
Oh, definitely. I saw that from the beginning, but I think the name that really jumps out here in Chicago that everybody's been talking about even before the season was over for the Bears was Ben Johnson. He's been a fan favorite here in Chicago. What did you hear about his interview? And do you think that he is the top choice for the Bears organization?
Yeah, I think they have their eyes on him. I think they're going to try to keep those communications with him as much as they can, knowing that the Raiders are pushing hard as well. Tom Brady, obviously the minority owner, has a very big influence in Las Vegas. And I think it's something that I think fans are surprised because everyone knew that he'd be part of the Raiders in terms of ownership, maybe being in the background, but that's not the case. Tom Brady is all in, talking to Mark Davis, the owner there, every single day, and Chicago was aware of this. So at this point right now, all Chicago can do is just wait as this playoff run here wraps up for Detroit, if it wraps up over the next week or so. But for them, Ben Johnson is definitely a top candidate, knowing, look at the success he's had in this offense with Jared Goff. But here's something, JP, that you have to consider and you have to think about if you're a Bears fan and you're set on Ben Johnson. I've had multiple people in the league say this to me. There is a world, there is a door here. Let's say the Chicago Bears are door number 1, the Jacksonville Jags are 2, the Raiders are 3. There is a fourth door here, and that fourth door is he stays in Detroit. There is a world where he may say, you know what? None of these fit for me. I don't want to leave Detroit. I want to stick with Jared Goff. I want to stick with what we're doing here and remain there. He's taking these interviews, which is a great sign, right? This is good. 4 interviews. I was expecting him to take only 2. So the fact that he's doing even more interviews tells me he's definitely probably interested in getting back in there, but only he knows really in his heart on what he wants to do next.
The Bears president, Kevin Warren, has mentioned that Ryan Poles is the front man for this coaching search. The Bears wouldn't answer, though, Diana, the question about a contract extension for Poles. So leaving all of us here in Chicago kind of with question marks over our head. How much of an issue do you think it is for a new head coach coming in here, or just a coach that has done it before that wants to maybe be linked with a guy that's future seems uncertain here in Chicago at the moment?
Yeah, most head coaches want to be aligned with the general manager. They want their contracts around the same time. So everyone's sort of working in the same direction. Everyone's rowing together, and no one has an advantage over the other, and everyone can kind of conduct business as a tandem. Because those are usually the best organizations, when the head coach and the GM are together on the same page, top to bottom. I don't necessarily believe that anyone that's been interviewing with the Chicago Bears have concerns over the future of Ryan Poles. He appears to be the guy that they're sticking with, that they believe in. You are not allowing Ryan Poles to conduct one of the most important head coaching search organization ever, with Caleb Williams sitting there, one of the best quarterbacks, at least one of the best young quarterbacks that we're seeing, with all of this talent, all this potential. You're not putting it in the hands of anyone that you don't believe in. And this organization has shown that they believe in Ryan Poles and his future here, or there in Chicago, by allowing him to conduct all this. And from what I was told, he is the presence in these meetings. This isn't where they say he's the one leading the search and then the Zoom starts and he's not talking. He is the one running this and doing a lot of the interviews and asking a lot of the questions of these head coach candidates.
Appreciate Diana Rossini joining us tonight, as always. A lot of interesting stuff there, K. Shark.
A lot to unpack and a lot to look forward to as this continues to play out.